Hello folks, I do have something a little bit different for you all today. It'll still be me talking with this bold and blunt voice of mine, but instead of a guide, patch notes or general news video, I wanted to make a mini documentary for Wuchang and by extension its developer Leenzee, taking a look into the developer's history, such as when they started and how their journey has been, whilst also looking at Wuchang's development cycle and how it's progressed and changed over the years. What prompted this was the fact that Leenzee basically have no track record or history within the gaming industry, so what little they have was quite fun to track down and try and piece together. Naturally, they've just released Wuchang, which has gone down as some players' favourite Souls-like game, and many other players do have really good things to say. But just who are Leenzee, how have they managed to make such a loud debut entrance, and what can we expect from this somewhat mysterious development team moving forward? All questions we're very much about to answer, so let's get started. As with most stories, it would be sensible to start from the beginning and work our way forward. So, taking ourselves all the way back to August 16th, 2016, we have a small little studio named Ricano being founded by a man named Zhang Min, with the sole focus of creating high-quality VR movies and games. This was all during the time where VR was quite new, and the original plan for Ricano was to break into the VR scene and dominate from very early. Now, there isn't too much solid information floating around regarding Ricano or its past endeavours. I located a website that seems abandoned and very outdated, along with a YouTube channel that hasn't seen activity for over 7 years. That being around 2018, roughly 2 or so years after the studio was founded. What I did find was a range of different sites regarding Ricano's progress and development. I could essentially see that it's had no new funding since around 2017. It consisted of up to roughly 50 employees, and its CEO, Zhang Min, has seemingly disappeared. Information regarding what they got up to is even more scarce. I was able to find out that they had possibly worked on a number of different VR movie projects and offered other services related to their VR experience. However, ultimately, other than one single project, I wasn't able to find anything else that they had previously worked on. Now, with this all said and done, I wouldn't blame you all for asking, what does this have to do with Leenzee, or Wuchang for that matter? Well, between 2018 and 2020, Ricano was essentially rebranded and renamed into Leenzee. I can't find a definitive date, and I'd hazard a guess it was probably sometime in 2019, but we just don't know. Now, I think what more or less happened is Ricano was abandoned and Leenzee was created using more or less the exact same team of around 50. Today, I pinned the Leenzee team at around 150 or so employees in total, so quite some growth over the years. As for Ricano's CEO Zhang Min, a quick Google search will reveal that Leentzee's co-founder is Jia Siyun. However, the other co-founder's name does remain undisclosed. I did try to dig around for any other mention of Zhang Min, and I wasn't able to find anything that indicated activity from him over the years. I'm not a detective, although I guess I'm certainly trying to be, so the information may very well exist. I just couldn't find any. What I did find, however, was this article from July 25th this year, published by Women of China, and it has some very potentially juicy info inside. Outside of the actual purpose of the article, it does state right here, Leenzee Games, based in Chengdu, the capital of southwest China's Sichuan province, spent 6 years 3D scanning dozens of ancient cultural relics found in Sichuan and beyond, from Buddhist grottos to ancient villages, according to Zhang Min, CEO of Leenzee Games. Local traditional arts like face-changing opera and a dance performed with splashing molten iron are also woven into the game's storytelling to enrich its cultural atmosphere. Its ambition raises a pivotal question: can China's gaming studios transform niche mythology into a sustained export? For Leenzee producer and chief technology officer Jia Xiyan, the answer lies in cultural resonance. Well. Albeit this article could just be wrong, but I doubt it, as there are other Chinese-based articles that also name Zhang. It also seems like it knows what it's talking about from a hands-on and in-person perspective, so it's very likely this could be a crack in Zhang Min's attempt at remaining mysterious. All jokes aside, Leenzee does indeed have co-founders. Zhang has seemingly disappeared, and yet we have this article right here that names and quotes both him and Jia at an event no longer than even a month ago. So I can say with almost absolute certainty that despite it not being common knowledge, Leentzee's co-founders are absolutely Zhang Min and Jia Zuyan. I'll be honest, it was at this point of my research that I started to get a taste for it, and I wanted more. The article continues to mention and quote both Zhang and Jia multiple other times, and is mostly in serving the purpose of promoting Wuchang and discussing the progress in game development within China, which has seen some huge developments with Black Myth Wukong, seemingly paving the way and showing the rest of China that both their own and the Western market is right there for the taking. Now, despite this, it's important to note that Wuchang was announced in August of 2020, whilst Wuchang was announced on September the 17th, 2021. And again, Wuchang went into early development sometime during 2018, whilst Wuchang went into development as of sometime in 2019. Somewhere around the same time, Ricano rebranded into Leenzee. During this time, Leenzee would of course have been working on their only other title to date, which would be a VR game named AD 2047 that they eventually released in 2021. Now, I've covered AD 2047 very briefly on the channel before, but to dive in once again today, it has been a struggle to locate certain information, but fortunately, whilst scouting for additional Ricano info, we did happen across their abandoned YouTube channel, and on here we have a single YouTube video being a demo for AD 2047 on the 30th of October 2017. This puts us somewhere around a year after Ricano was founded, and it explains why AD 2047 can be found on both the abandoned Ricano website as well as the currently active Leenzee website. This also very much explains a large portion of Ricano's efforts between 2016 and 2019, with 2019 being the same year Wuchang went into development. Additionally, on Leenzee's official YouTube channel, which is seemingly abandoned, we have a trailer for AD 2047 with this particular statement in its description. 4 years ago, when the cyberpunk style was far less prevalent, a VR interactive movie called AD 2047 attracted many players' attention. When most VR-related products were still making a fuss about augmenting virtual reality effects, AD 2047 already focused on the interactive experience of content, trying to polish in-game image quality, plots, actions, and even music, digging deeper into the game's interactivity and strengthening the player's immersive experience. On July 8th, the long-awaited high-quality VR interactive movie AD 2047 will finally be launched officially by Leenzee Games on Steam with a limited-time discount price of $13.90 USD. Meaning, yes, AD 2047 was in development for over 4 years and seemingly took up the vast majority of Ricano's / Leenzee's time and efforts. But as for AD 2047 itself, to summarize, it's mostly reviewed as a decent game with some clear performance issues, yet most players enjoyed it despite the issues or the fact that it is a very short experience of only roughly 3 hours. Ultimately, it doesn't tell us much about Leenzee, other than they clearly commit to their projects, and regardless of possibly having many issues with AD 2047's development, they still very much complete the entire project and release the game before moving on. So, taking everything so far and arranging it in order, we have Zhang founding Ricano on August 16th, 2016. Then on October 30th, 2017, we have a demo for AD 2047, followed up with Wuchang going into development sometime in 2019. Now, we know that at some point between 2018 and 2021, Ricano rebranded into Leenzee, with Leenzee's official YouTube channel being created on January the 21st, 2021. But I'd place my estimates at possibly sometime around late 2019 or possibly even 2020. Then on July 8th, 2021, AD 2047 was officially released. And then later that year, we have Wuchang being officially announced on September the 17th. So, with Leenzee's entire timeline somewhat established, and with a relatively clear outline of their activities from 2016 right through to 2021, it's from here that we actually start looking at Wuchang's development and all of the ups and downs it entailed. Now, to backtrack just a little bit, because prior to AD 2047's launch, Wuchang did start development back in 2019, and that's where we should definitely be starting off from. During this time, it's likely that the framework for Wuchang was being put together, whilst the final work for AD 2047 was also taking place. And once this released, it's likely all hands would have been on deck for Wuchang, as we have its first ever public reveal on September the 17th, 2021, which is, of course, 3 or so months after AD 2047's release, essentially relinquishing Leenzee of that entire project and allowing them to shift their entire focus onto Wuchang. The September 17th announcement in 2021 couldn't have been any better for the Leenzee team, as this seemingly caught the attention of the well-known publisher 505 Games, and shortly after Wuchang's announcement, Leenzee did acquire 505 Games' full publishing support, with AD 2047 previously having been published entirely by Leenzee themselves. Now, having the publishing support of 505 Games doesn't guarantee success or greatness. Earlier this year, an unknown gem of a game called Blades of Fire was released with practically zero marketing and thus has reportedly lost the developers over 11 million USD. But of course, having the full support of a publisher does of course come with its benefits. We've no idea how much budget was placed into Ricano originally, and we've no idea how much AD 2047 cost to make, or how much potential profit it may or may not have made Leenzee. What we do know, however, is they would have had a nice injection to their budget through 505 games. So, the year is 2021, it's September 17th, and Wuchang has just been announced for the world to see. The original footage from back then does look quite different to the final product, with it being obvious that between 2021 and 2024, Wuchang did receive a makeover, and not just a complete rehaul of the game's visual style and mechanics, but also Wuchang herself. Now, I've discussed these changes before regarding the game's visual style and mechanics. The developers came out and said at the time that due to feedback, they were worried about possibly making a Bloodborne clone and wanted to double down on creating something truly unique. As for Wuchang's character model herself, now, funnily enough, I've been sat on this information for a little while and just haven't had an appropriate time to use it, but as we can see, she was absolutely changed. Now, some time ago, this post was made by Pirate Nation, where he insinuated that Leenzee had changed Wuchang's character model due to the success of the likes of Stellar Blade. Now, these images are from a 2024 trailer and a 2025 trailer, disproving that theory, and the developers came out and said that Wuchang's character model was not changed, etc. However, we can see here that between 2021 and 2024, her character model was absolutely changed. Make of that information what you will, it's not important, but it is definitely true. So, from 2021 right through to 2024, Wuchang announces itself, receives publishing from 505 Games, and then undergoes a series of core changes to improve almost every aspect of the game. Then this brings us to the 2024 announcement on the 9th of June at the Xbox Game Showcase. Now, this trailer is the one that really began to create some traction, as around this time the world had already received Elden Ring in 2022, which solidified the Souls-like genre into the mainstream space, then Lies of P in 2023, which shown the world that even the more obscure dev teams could deliver FromSoft levels of quality, and then Black Myth Wukong was on the horizon for the 20th of August 2024, just a month or so after Wuchang Showcase, and we all know the hype surrounding Black Myth Wukong was quite unlike almost any other game we've seen. So, over the course of 2024, a small amount of hype is amassed for Wuchang, slowly garnering its core fanbase and then flagging up on many different gamers' radars here and there, until eventually we tick on over to 2025. At the beginning of this year, we received a dev diary by Leenzee, published on the 7th of February by the official 505 Games YouTube channel, and within this dev diary, they explain that they have undergone the process of quote-unquote upgrading Wuchang from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5. Now, they explain that they did this for performance purposes, however, public opinion very much suggests that every game to have been developed on or upgraded to Unreal Engine 5 has had bad performance issues, and the engine is largely viewed as being suboptimal due to this. Now, the announcement did flag the first ever concerns for Wuchang. Lots of gamers had seen the same scenario play out for previous games before, and thus began to believe the same issues could very well affect Wuchang. Fast forward to July 23rd, 2025, and over the course of the months, Leenzee have been hard at work showing Wuchang off to the rest of the world via various different functions and events, allowing attendees to play the game and record various different pieces of footage. The 505 YouTube channel and various other associated and non-associated channels like myself helped to drive up attention and hype for Wuchang's launch, until eventually July 24th rolls around and the world is finally able to play Wuchang. To say the initial reception for Wuchang was not great would be putting it lightly. Almost immediately, it was met with a plethora of negative player reviews, and despite an all-time peak of 130,000 players on Steam, the game did quickly find itself with the overwhelmingly negative label. The main culprit for this negative reception was of course the game's performance and rendering issues. For both consoles and PCs alike, many gamers found themselves with issues that would often render the game unplayable, or at the very least not very enjoyable, due to stuttering, screen tear, poor resolution, and many other issues. This wasn't to say all gamers were affected. Those with higher-end PCs or consoles like the PS5 Pro or Series X were finding they had far fewer or zero issues with the game at all. Now, on the same day as launch, Leenzee and 505 Games released a statement regarding the negative reception and feedback, and the intro went as follows. First of all, we want to extend our most sincere thanks to everyone who supports and follows our game. It means a lot to us. We have received reports regarding issues such as the game's optimization not meeting expectations, errors in distributing pre-order rewards, and some abnormal pricing. These problems should never have occurred, and we deeply regret the inconvenience and negative experience some players are currently facing. Since this statement, Leenzee have released a handful of updates that have affected performance and solved quite a few issues for the players, whilst very recently they announced an upcoming update expected between August 11th and August 17th, where they say they will be fixing a plethora of issues, both performance and gameplay related. We are, of course, right on the precipice of this 1.5 update, and that also brings us right up to today. How things go from here, we will have to wait and see, but since Wuchang's launch, Leenzee have had multiple opportunities to reach out and connect with its audience, and so far, that's exactly what they've done. They've taken responsibility, they've issued multiple statements and updates, and they've met the negative feedback head on, instead of shifting blame or ignoring it entirely. I think it's important to appreciate everything outlined about this team already. We've seen that they emerged out of nowhere with ambitions of breaking into the VR market, only to find the market may have been far more competitive or far less lucrative than they would have liked. They underwent an entire rebranding before officially releasing anything, and after only ever releasing a very niche and overall short VR game/movie, they then spent the next 4 years developing Wuchang, overhauling the entire game's mechanics and visuals, and then very last minute transferring the entire game over to Unreal Engine 5, which undoubtedly caused time constraints that likely led to the performance issues we have. In all of this, Leenzee as a development studio have only ever had these past few weeks to truly interact with a mainstream audience. Due to their infancy, they've never had the luxury of experience or familiarity. Right now, this is essentially their first ever endeavor into the public space, and the first time they have ever had the opportunity to interact with a large fan base. And so far, they have handled it with respect and dignity. This could very well be a make or break moment for Leenzee as a whole. They basically have nothing outside of AD 2047 or Wuchang to show for the past 9 years, and if Wuchang were to fail, a future may just not be possible. In the face of the review bombing, Leenzee did not break. Despite not having ever released a game of anywhere close to this caliber before, they have not caved to the pressure, and they have handled the situation about as best as they could have. Leenzee do have no track record. If we are to judge a development studio by their actions, then we can judge Leenzee's on these past couple of weeks. Launch may not have been perfect, but they seem very determined to turn public perception around and ensure that their fans feel respected and appreciated. I may sound biased, and to be honest, after putting this all together, I think I may have developed a bit of a soft spot for Leenzee. They have seemingly came out of nowhere and delivered one of the best Souls-likes I've played in a very long time. We oftentimes assume that studios have longer histories or more experience than they actually do, but given Leenzee's infancy, its history, and its achievements, I'd say we'd be pretty foolish to write this studio off, and I, for one, cannot wait to see what they do next. Wuchang to date has sold over 1 million copies on all platforms combined. It's estimated to have cost 50 million to make and has likely grossed around 30 million back on Steam already, adding PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Game Pass deal, and it's likely that Wuchang has recuperated or will recuperate those costs very, very soon. And then finally, the review score now sits just as close to positive as it does negative, and hopefully with time, some solid updates and possibly even a big announcement or two, Wuchang may just turn out to be quite a success story. But of course, and as always, we will just have to wait and see. Thank you ever so much for watching, folks. If you made it this far, then please don't hesitate to let me know what you think below. As you can imagine, this video took a lot longer and a lot more effort to make, so any and all feedback is much obliged. I had a lot of fun making this, and I'm glad I did, because it's taught me something about not judging studios until I have all of the facts, and it's also made me kind of hungry to do more videos in the same spirit as this one. But for now, that would be it for this one, folks. I have a range of guides and news videos on the channel already, so do feel free to stop on by and check things out. But otherwise, thanks for watching, folks, and until next time, peace.